Hello, Dave Osterkamp, Pastor Dave here, coming to you from beautiful Linwood, Minnesota. Welcome to First Word. This is a podcast dedicated to simply reading and discussing the Bible together. The Bible is a book you can pick up for the first time and find life-changing truth. It's also a book you can study for the rest of your life and not exhaust its complexities. So at First Word, whether it's your first time or your 1,000th time, we strive to make the Bible understandable and interesting as we discover together what it says. So let's dive in. The book of Mark. We're into Mark chapter 3. And since the beginning of Mark chapter 2, Jesus has encountered a lot of conflict. He healed a paralyzed man and told him that his sins could be forgiven, something God can only do. He ate with tax collectors and sinners, and he told one of them to follow me. He was questioned about fasting and why his followers were not fasting while John the Baptist and the Pharisees were. And then the Sabbath. He ran into lots of issues about doing good on the Sabbath and when do we work and when do we not. And then he's appointed 12 people. And today we encounter some more conflict from a different group, a very surprising group. Question for you as we start, right before we read. Have you ever been accused of something you do not believe in or of something you did not do? Have you ever been mislabeled? Have you ever experienced slander? Have you ever been slandered by people you love? Do you know that pain and that hurt of being accused of something that is not true of you? Well, if you do, you have a friend in Jesus, someone you can go to that knows that story and knows that pain. Let's read about it in Mark chapter 3. Then Jesus entered a house, and again a large crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, "He is out of his mind." And the teachers of the law who came down from Jerusalem said, "He is possessed by Beelzebul, the prince of demons. He is driving out demons." So Jesus called them over to him and began to speak to them in parables. "How can Satan drive out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan opposes himself and is divided, he cannot stand. His end has come. In fact, no one can enter a strong man's house without first tying him up. Then he can plunder the strong man's house. Truly, I tell you, people can be forgiven all their sins and every slander they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. They are guilty of an eternal sin." He said this because they were saying, "He has an impure spirit." Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you." "Who are my mother and brothers?" he asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." The word of the Lord from John. All right, pretty intense. So obviously, as we read this, we see that the scribes are slandering Jesus, which has been done before, but now it's his own family that is accusing Jesus of being a madman. And so this gets really, really personal and really difficult. The whole question is, what is the source of Jesus' authority? Is it the devil? Is it madness? Or is it God? Is it the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? The religious leaders in Jesus' family didn't have ears to see or ears to hear and eyes to see. We're going to get to that in Mark 4. All this conflict is leading up to tomorrow in Mark chapter 4. So let me see where I want to start here. His family comes and he went indoors. Okay, let's start here. He went indoors and he couldn't even eat, right? All these people want to hear and they want to see. And then his family comes to get him, and they're accusing him of being out of his mind. which in essence is really accusing him of being demon-possessed. We've already seen that madness is often attributed to a demon. So likely his family and the scribes were really saying the same thing. The scribes that they say, it says that they came from Jerusalem. So that's the headquarters. That's like Washington, D.C. So these scribes even bring more authority than the religious leaders that were out in Galilee. Remember our map here. I can show you our map. You see Jerusalem is down in the purple in the south, and then Jesus was up in Galilee, and so there were synagogues there. But then the ones that come from Jerusalem, they carry a special authority, and so they came to challenge Jesus. The word was out, and they came to let people know that Jesus' power and authority is not from God. It's actually from Satan himself. They think that his teaching is contrary to the Torah, and so they accuse him of being possessed by Satan. And Jesus asked this simple question: how can Satan drive out Satan? It's absurd to accuse Jesus of being Satan, because now he's destroying Satan. If Satan brings disease and death, if Satan brings madness and all these things, and all these people that are afflicted walk away healthy and whole, then that's not the work of Satan. That's the work of goodness. That's the work of God. And in verse 27, I'm going to pull it up here for you. Said, in fact, no one can enter a strong man's house without first tying him up. Like, this is what Jesus says. This is what I'm doing. And it calls to mind Jesus' battle with Satan in the desert when he went out to be tempted. Mark touched on it briefly. The other Gospels give it more time. And Jesus says, I went out to the desert. I did battle with Satan. I've tied him up. And now I am undoing all of his evil works. Jesus here is making a claim that can get you killed. Once again, that I am the Son of Man. I am the Messiah. I am God, come in the flesh to tie up the strong man and to plunder his house. So then Jesus says, all people's sins can be forgiven except for those that blaspheme against the Holy Spirit, kind of the unforgivable sin. Mona Hooker, who's commentary I'm reading, said this is the deliberate refusal to acknowledge the activity of God's Spirit in Jesus' ministry. Again, Mark 4, tomorrow, ears to hear, eyes to see. It's the attitude that makes a man attribute the work of God to Satan and confuses goodness and evil with truth and falsehood. Accusing Jesus of being Satan and seeing goodness and claiming it as evilness, to push Jesus aside. This is the sin that is unforgivable. Mark chapter 3. So this is the big question. The point here is not then we get to Jesus' relatives, right? And they come. And it's Jesus' mothers and his relatives. When it says brothers, it could really mean any male relative. And the point really here isn't that Jesus seems to be being rude to his relatives. It's really about Jesus' attitude. Is not so much about Jesus' attitude to his mother and brothers, but about their attitude toward him. And Jesus says, my true family are not those related by blood, but those who do the will of God. For further reading today, you can read Luke 14. We're actually going to talk about this passage on Sunday. But this idea of discipleship that Jesus says, it's about following God even if your mother and brothers come against you, if the scribes come against you, whoever comes against you. It's about having the courage to follow God and to let go of belonging anywhere else. That is challenging to do. Jesus' true family are not those related by blood, but Jesus' true families are those who do the will of God. And Mark is always throwing that question to us, even 2,000 years later. Are you a part of Jesus' family or not? As we see this hint of hell and heaven, of separation from God, God will honor your choice. Do we have ears to hear? Do we have eyes to see? Are we a part of this true family? Are we joining Jesus in tying up the strong man and plundering his house and making everything right and whole and good again? I hope you are. That's my goal. I don't do it perfect by any means. Need forgiveness every day. But today is another opportunity to go out, find a neighbor to love, someone's day to improve, someone to encourage, to help. to bring some wholeness and goodness. So I'll leave you with this benediction, friends. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Be well. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.